What's good, everyone? This is Marcus the Fingaz, DAFINGAZ, back with the Sampleist and back with another Keepforest review. In this video, we're going to talk all about Berserkr. And if you are familiar with a previous Keepforest review we did, the one I did, Watchkeeper, that was a really in-depth look into the Keepforest UI. And we're going to do something similar here, so be ready for a great journey. Before we get into all of that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, the Sampleist on YouTube, for more great videos like the one you are about to watch. And although the library was provided by the great team over at Keepforest, they have not had any input into the library, and that will not affect our decision on the capabilities and features of the library itself. So let's get into it. What is Keepforest Berserkr? It is a tribal punk folk drum library. It allows us as music creators to create sonic landscapes for ancient battles, for rituals. It includes epic percussions and even some tonal elements. It has some tribal essence, some punk infusion, some folk roots. Has some drums that are reimagined, and it allows us to enhance our creativity as we are working and creating our music. There are different versions of the library. There's a pro version and a core version, and then you can also just get the WAV files. Starting with the core version itself, the core version is about 30% of the pro content. There are no added layers. In the core version, there are 62 patches. You have a single level navigation system for ease and simplicity, and you also have a WAV folder of over 8,000 audio files. You can also just get the WAV folder of over 8,000 audio files. And in the pro version, you have 244 patches. You have the 62 core patches, 97 multi-instruments. You have a plethora of sound designs, over 44 gigabytes of samples, and of course the WAV folder of over 8,000 audio files. The WAV version only is currently priced at the time of this recording at $119. It is normally $149. The core version is $179. It is normally $199, and the pro version is currently priced at $269, normally $299. So definitely catch that if you can at those discounted prices, or at the normal price if they're no longer on sale. It's definitely worth the price of admission. It does require Kontakt 7.5.2 or higher, and it is compatible with the free Kontakt player. So that is all the logistics and features and specs of the Keepforest on paper. Let's get into the different pages. If you are familiar with Watchkeeper and Keepforest UIs in general, you might be familiar with pages like this. We have the main page, we have the rhythm page, and the effect page. We're going to go into all these pages. We're going to dive in. Don't be fooled, because you might only see a few buttons here, but there's a lot you can do under the hood. I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about this. Let's see. Do we go left or right? Do we start in the middle? Let's start left to right. So we have a filter option here, which includes a low pass filter or a high pass filter. You see that change if I click that there, which allows you to roll off the lows or roll off the highs, or keep the lows and highs. The low pass filter allows you to roll off the highs. So I have a kick here. So I have a kick here, and you have the low pass filter. You also have this thing which can switch between constant and velocity mode. Constant will close the filter. It will not react to velocities. Velocity mode will react to your velocity input. So with constant mode, if I had the low pass filter all the way down here, you see it is keeping everything, what is that, below 20 hertz. If I bring it up a little bit, you bring in some more highs. And then with high pass filter, we are keeping just the high elements there. And then with velocity, the way the filter reacts is determined by the velocity input that you make on your keyboard, or the input that you're making as you're playing. So that is the filter that is built into the plugin. What's next to that? We have this offset button. It'll offset the start of the sample. So I can offset it by negative 200 milliseconds or positive 200 milliseconds. And if you look at where the start of the sample is, or we can have it right there in the middle, close to zero. As close to zero as I can get. You hear the punch of that kick. And as I move it up, you hear a little clicking going on. So you can adjust the sample based on that there. So that is what offset does. Let's get into, we'll come back to the middle. What we're going to do is we're going to jump over to ADSR and AH Step AHD. The ADSR is shaping the overall volume for the sound, and the step HD will shape the individual steps. So we'll have attack, decay, sustain, release. If you're familiar with ADSR and envelope controls, you know what those do. I'm going to adjust the knobs here. Let's turn everything to the left. It's going to be short. For this one, let's turn everything to the left. For the C2, so you don't hear anything because there's no sustain and release. We bring up the sustain. You hear a little bit of sound peeking through. Bring up the decay. You start hearing what each of these knobs do. The release, we'll have it hold out. You hear that reverb tail hanging out. And then you can adjust the attack. That is ADSR. Step AHD allows you to have individual sample adjustments. So if we are in step mode here, I can adjust the step, the attack, hold, decay, fade out, which is similar to ADSR. And you can see a little graph here below the fade out to see what kind of fade you are creating there. So you can adjust between those two different modes using the step mode here. When you do click step mode, that will still have your track synced to your tempo. It will still have the sample synced to your tempo, but you can define which sample you want to play by adjusting the start and end marker. So right now, I don't have really any control here. When I have step mode engaged, I can now get in here and I can adjust the start and end marker. If you see that there, it's kind of light, but the start marker right there, there's end marker there. Let's bring up the fade out and the decay. Here we go. So that'll play the whole thing there. So that is a step mode. By adjusting the start end markers, you have this little one here if you can see that. And I will have this, I think, blown up on the screen so you can see it bigger. This is where you can adjust the speed of the tempo of what's being played back. Let's find another. We will get into some of the loops and things here. Let me go to... So here we have a tambourine ensemble loaded up from the medieval ensemble. And what I'm going to do is just play it at normal speed. We have X1 here. That is a normal speed. As you can see, I'm holding down the C2 button here at the bottom. So let's double the speed. And that is doubling the speed or the tempo of the playback. And let's cut it in half. So that cuts it in half. So that's what you can do with that X1 to multiply. If we click on the step mode button, we have some more options here we can go through. We have this doubling and tripling feature. By default, this is what it sounds like. Let's put it at 2x. Actually, when you have step mode, when you have the step mode engaged, you lose that sort of doubling feature. So we are going to have step mode engaged. We're going to go to default. I'm just playing keys. I'm just hitting the C2. If I go to this doubling option, you see some options show up over here. And we can now adjust layers for the double or the tripling. And we'll leave it at tripling for now. And what you have up here is you have delay, which is a static delay between the samples. You can adjust between 0 and 200 milliseconds. This is useful for creating rolls and things like that. So I'm going to go down to 0. And I'm going to go up to 200. You hear that delay sort of happening there. If we go to about, let's say, 100, you have like a tambourine roll there. If we go to about 50, so that is delay. We also have drift, which is like a light delay, dynamic delay that will offset one sample from another. So you have between 0 and about 50 milliseconds here with drift. Let's layer that with the other delay. So you can use that to sort of humanize some of the elements there. Then we have width. That adjusts the stereo image. So we can go mono or stereo. So you have that. Then you have levels, which is sort of like width, but it's how much the wide signal is compared to the central signal. So we can bring out the central signal and keep the wide signal, or we can have the central signal, which is more like a mono. And then you can adjust those comparatively. And then we also have this pitch offset or pitch drift, which will allow the sample to constantly drift in pitch. 0 cents all the way up to 100. Is that 100 cents? I think 100 cents. You'll really hear it in a tonal element. This is sort of not really a tonal element. Let's see if we can bring up a tonal thing for you. Hold on, let's go to tonal elements. There we go. And we'll bring up ROM. Let's engage step mode. We'll engage tripling, and we will bring the pitch to 100%, 100 cents. Well, let's do 0. And then let's do 100. You sort of hear that. So that actually sounds funny. That would be more for like comedy. I would think if you want to layer that Brahm with a comedy thing. But you can use all those different layerings for dynamic and tripling and doubling, or the default option there. You also have different playback options here. You have default, which is plays from the beginning to the end. You have random, which will randomize what's being played. You have A and B. You have odd, which will only play the odd samples. You have even, which will only play the even samples. You have reverse, which will play from the end of the loop back to the beginning. You have free, and you also have shuffle. Free mode is typically great for like one-shot samples, and it is the only mode that has a random sample start position, so keep that in mind. And then you have shuffle, which is sort of like another version of random up here. All right, so we are almost done with this page. Just a few more buttons we want to highlight here. We also have stretch mode. So I can take this sample. Remember what this Brahm sounds like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the fade out and the decay. And let's see. I'm going to leave it at that. So this note, I believe it's a D, might be a D. Let's go to C. So as I play the blue notes here, the red notes are different notes, different tones. So if I go to, like, let's say I want to play this F or G, but the blue notes are the different samples. And the green notes are also different samples. So you might hear those different sort of tones playing. Let's say I like that sample, sounds like a funny cello violin type thing, and I want to stretch that across the keyboard. This is where I can hit that note, and I can go stretch mode, and now I can play it across the key like it was a keyboard instrument. So now you can stretch that, not just for tonal elements. If you want to stretch tambourines and other percussion sounds and things like that, you can stretch it across the keyboard using stretch mode. And this will tell you sort of the root note here. That is the root note of the sample. So you can use that. You can also choose the sample that you want to play. If you like another sample better, you can choose a start and end point there, similar to what you could do when it wasn't in stretch mode. You can also adjust here the low note and the high note. And you see your keyboard. If you have a Native Instruments keyboard, you'll see the blue lights on your keyboard adjust accordingly to what you set here. So you have so many options there with stretch mode and step mode and all the options down here. A couple more buttons on this main page here. At the top, you will see this H button, which will show the hotkeys for the page you are on. So if you are all about learning shortcuts and using those shortcuts to navigate through your DAW or through your plugins, you can click that hotkey button there on any page, and it will be a contextual layover on the page you're on. So there are a lot of shortcuts on this page, on the rhythm page, which we will get to shortly. And then on the effects page, there are also some one shortcut there on the hotkey. So there you go. So if you want to learn those, you can say, hey, I'm doing this one feature a lot. Is there a hotkey for it? Hit the H button, and you can see, hey, if I hit Alt and what is that? Alt LMB? Alt and clicking on something there, that will adjust whatever that button is, that parameter is. So if you hold down Alt, Control, Shift, you can also use this to learn about hotkeys. So you can say, hey, if I hit Alt or Control or Shift on a parameter, that might do something. So for example, let's see if I move this up here and I'm holding down, I am using a Mac, so I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to click on that. That brings up a Learn MIDI automation thing. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to click on that. That's not doing anything right now that I can see. I'm going to hold down Command. I'm going to click on it, and holding down Command on a Mac and clicking on it looks like it'll reset the parameter back to its default. So that's a good thing to know. And then if I hold down Shift, let's see. I think Shift is allowing me to move it in sort of smaller increments as opposed to one sort of long fell swoop. Yes. So you can try those sort of options, Shift Control, Option Command, or Shift Alt Control on the Windows, I believe. But you can use that H button to see different options for their hotkeys or shortcuts on the plugin itself. All right, so that is it for the main page. Now we're going to jump over to the rhythm page, and we are going to, let's see if we load up a rhythm here. Let me see what sound I have loaded up. I'm going to load up a percussion sound. We're going to go to war drums. I'm using the core war drums. We're going to go to signature. I don't know how this is going to sound. And we're going to come out of, it's going to default to whatever. It took us out of stretch mode. We have different samples there. There's tripling going on. We might do a higher pitch. Let's go to C1 here. There we go. And we're going to go to our rhythm page. So now we have rhythms loaded up. This rhythm page, there are a lot of functions here. You have 5 different lanes of rhythms. You can copy from one to another. You can randomize from different ones. So where did we start? I think we're going to start right here on the sort of the core element of the page. So I'm just going to turn on velocity and you're going to hear what's going on. So what we have down here, we can randomize the sequence that's being played in that lane. We can copy from one lane to another lane. So I can copy this sequence and it'll overlay it depending on the function of the other lane. You'll see that change there. We also have this reset button. So this will reset all the parameters for that lane. So we can reset everything here. And that will be for each individual lane. We also have similar functions up the top. We can crop, we can do some smoothing. We also have copy and paste up top. We can also reset. This is more on the dynamics controls, which we will get to shortly. We also have sequence controls. So we have a lot going on. So let us go just here in the main grid that you see. We're gonna do a random thing again with velocity. I'm gonna turn off these other lanes. Velocity. So each step here represents a quarter bar by default. So what you can do is you can add different sub steps all the way up to, I want to say up to 16th notes, which can get really interesting, especially at fast tempos. You can also use the random function. I just like using the random function, but it will not change how many steps you have set there. So if you want to set that and then use a random function, you can adjust that accordingly. You can also use Alt. Remember those options we were talking about on the last page. You can use Alt to tweak all steps. So I'm going to hold down, I believe that'll be Option on my keyboard, and you can see that is tweaking those steps. So let's say we bring everything, we reset everything, and I want to adjust the first of each quarter there, or each bar there. I can lower that and raise that accordingly by holding down the Option key or the Alt key on Macs. If I hold down the Control key, you can see I can adjust. You see that red line I'm drawing there? The Control key, I can tweak through one step there. You see that red line? Hopefully you can see that red line, and that will adjust that singular step on that step, on that bar. And you can also use those functions. So let's say I want to have each bar have only 2. I can hold down Option and I can move it to 2. And I'm holding down Option while clicking these plus and minus buttons to add different steps. I can also hold down Shift. And as you see, if I hold down Shift, it is only adjusting every 3 steps or so there. So you have all these different functions. When you click a button, just try to hold down Shift, Control, or Option, or Command, and see what happens as you're doing that. Again, you can adjust these parameters by holding down those different keys. I don't know if those are on the hotkeys there. They might be, I think so. Control, Command. Yeah, so you have those hotkeys there. So hold down Control, Shift. It will adjust different steps there. So you can also refer to those hotkeys if you forget, or you can just adjust them accordingly based on just clicking one knob. You have this randomized velocity. So you can plus or minus a percentage right here. You can have all the way up to 100% to randomize the velocity. So if I hit this random button, if I bring it all the way up to 100%, and I'll hit play. One thing I don't see on the main page, I think I lost the color of the keyboard. I don't know what's happening there. Let's bring this back and we'll see if the keyboard sort of layout comes back here. There we go. If I go to the rhythm page again, I didn't notice when it went out, but such is life. Let's go random again here on the velocity page. You can go 100%, click random. You have an option where you can get the MIDI. So I can drag the MIDI out. I can click get MIDI. It says press get MIDI, and then I can drag this over into Logic. It can import the tempo. I'm not going to do all that. I use Logic, but you can drag the MIDI from here, and then you can load up other sounds that you want to use. So that's actually a great feature built into the plugin there to get the MIDI from the sequence that you've created here or that you've randomized here in the plugin itself. Next, we're going to go check out the pan option here. I'm going to turn off velocity. I'm going to have pan. This will adjust the panning from left to right. Might be hard to hear with the doubling going on. Or tripling going on. We're going to go to default here. Let's go here. So you can hear it going back and forth. We can randomize the panning there. And one thing I didn't mention is at the bottom here, you have steps. So I can say, I want this whole thing to be, let's say, 4 steps, or just one big step. And we can adjust that. Or I want to adjust the frequency. So it's going to be, frequency is more like, it's almost like steps, like how along the bars are beat. So let's say 16th. It's really fast. Or we can do quarter. You also have some triplet value there. Or you can adjust between hertz. So we can say 47 hertz. That's going to blow your ears away. Depending on the context you want to use there. You also have tempo, where you can adjust the speed, similar to what we saw on the main page here. We had the X1, half, and 2. I believe we have a little bit more options here, so we can go all the way down to a quarter of the tempo or up to 4 times the tempo. And then we also have half and double. That is for all the options. For velocity, if you see there, we have those options there also. And then finally, we have humanize, which allows us to humanize the playback based on milliseconds, all the way from 0 to 60 milliseconds to add just a human element to it. That would be similar to like some drift. So that is the 4 knobs at the bottom. Let's go over to the filter page, where we also have right here, we have some filter options. We have a lot of filter options. You have low pass, high pass. You have a lot of state variables, some ladder filters, some legacy filters. You have bandpass filters. You have peak and notch filters. You have, is that multi-filters? Then some effect filters. And you can go through and toggle between those, or we can just hit random here. And let me go to low pass. We're going to bring up the sensitivity all the way up to 100%. So you see that happening there. We also have, if we click this settings knob here, we can adjust the resonance and gain. So you can start to build sort of like less percussive and more tonal, sort of blippy type sounds. Blippy, glitchy, I guess was the word I was looking for. So that is a little bit of the filter. Let's go over to pitch. So with pitch here, we can adjust by semitones or by cents up here using this knob here. We can also, let me add some more steps. We'll go to 8. We'll randomize the pitch, and you'll hear the actual tuning of the drum adjust in pitch. And again, you can adjust the humanize, the frequency, and all that down there. You can go by semitones, or we can go by cents if you want something a little less drastic. You won't hear it really on this sound. You'll probably hear it more in the tonal sounds, but let's just, for fun, go play that. Yes, like I said, you won't hear it there on that sound. And then we have layers. This is sort of like diving in deeper on what we saw on the main page with the sort of tripling and doubling, where we can have more granular control over the layers. So we can say, hey, I want the tripling and doubling to occur at these certain frequencies in the sequence. Let's hit random here. I believe this layers will override whatever you have set here. If you have tripling and doubling, it actually, I don't know if it'll work. Let's see. So I believe it's similar. You can adjust the settings more on a macro level here, and you can go here to dive in and adjust them on a micro level. You can also click this gear knob to get those same options that you have on the front page. So it is similar. It's tied together. You just got to know where to navigate when you're looking for those settings. So you have these same knobs that we saw on the main page, but you can dive in deeper here. You can adjust the sequences on a more granular level with the layers knob. Let's do another random thing here. And again, we can hold down, I believe, Control, or is it Option, or is it Command? It is Command. We can hold down Command to go back to default. So if I have this down, I hold down Command and click. I believe it's Control on a PC. I can hold down Command and click to get back to a default state. And again, you can hit the H up here to get those hotkeys that you are forgetting, or you can just randomly select buttons and push to your heart's content until you find the option you are looking for. We also have this Arrange knob, which will sort of create an arrangement for you. We are doing layers, so let's adjust here. So there is that. You also can move, let's say I want to have a longer, let's go back to velocity. And we'll bring this up, we'll take out layers. So if I wanted to move by like one step, if I wanted to move the whole sequence over by one step to just see how that sounds, you can use these arrows on the left and right. You also have some dynamics controls. If you make sure your dynamics is engaged, we will get to the dynamics page shortly. But if dynamics is powered on, you see the slider here that will allow you to adjust the overall level. Let's turn off the dynamics page. The overall level of the velocity or whatever lane you're in. If you have a dynamic slider on the left, you can adjust that contextually based on what's happening on your sequence. And then you also have more granular level control of dynamics using the dynamics option here, which we will get to shortly. So I can use a step. Let's say if we go all the way up to 16, there's a ruler up here at the top where, let's say I like what's really happening in the first four, what is that, 7, I'll go to 4, first 4 bars here, or first 3 bars here, let's go to 4, first 4 bars, and I just want to keep that. What I can do is I can hit this little crop button there, and that'll crop it down to that 4 steps. Of course, you could use this also if you really like that, but that's just a fast way to crop to whatever you have set by your markers in the ruler. We can also smooth out some of the peaks of the what's happening in the sequence by clicking the smooth button until it sounds how you want it to sound. So we also have copy and paste up here. We also have the ability to flip the sequence on its axis, either the horizontal or vertical axis. So if you click that, you see what's happened there. That is flipping it on its vertical, horizontal. This will flip it on its horizontal. This will flip it on the vertical axis. So you have those options there if you want to adjust the sequence and just see what happens. A lot of great options there. One thing about the lanes that I should mention, the pan lane and the pitch lane have bipolar sequences, so that allows you to go above and beyond, above and below sort of the midpoint here, because with panning and pitching, you can go left and right, and with pitching, you can go up and down. With the others, you just have the sort of one up, only up or nothing. So keep that in mind when you are creating your different patterns and sequences in these lanes here. All right, now we jump over to velocity curve. You see this little icon here? We can apply different velocity curves to the lane, to the current sequence in the lane. So let's say I want to have just a little bit more of a gradual rise in the velocity curve. What you'll see is this little white outline as you adjust the curve, and that will tell you what will happen after you hit apply to the sequence you're playing. So if let's say I lower that down, you see that's all about sort of a little bit, maybe halfway, less than halfway. If I hit apply there, that adjusts that accordingly. We also have different curves. We can use an S curve here, which would be more of a different ramp in the middle there. We hit apply there. You see what's happening there. We also have a brick wall, which is more like limiting, which will bring everything all the way up. That'll be like a brick wall velocity, at least in this case. And I can hit apply there. You'll see what's happening there. And then finally, we have a scale curve, which would be sort of like linear, but on a scale. It'll scale the velocities proportionally. So I will hit apply there. And that is the velocity curve option there. You can use a gear icon to adjust that. So you have so many options, and we're not even done with the rhythm page yet. Now we're going to jump over to the right side here, where we have Groove Maker. With Groove Maker, let me add some more steps here, and we'll do a random. We'll go to velocity. We're turning these off. We'll do velocity. We'll make it a random thing, and I'm going to hit. Let me turn off. I think I have some panning going on. We're going to reset that. We're going to bring that there. All right. So with velocity, with the Groove Maker, what we can do is we can have this skip steps function, which allows us to skip steps within a velocity range based on a probability. That's a lot. The best way to experience this is to just hit different buttons. So we're going to go to 100% on the velocity range. We're going to go to 100% on probability, and we'll see what happens. As you can see, it is skipping every step. What if we narrow this range to the top 20%? That means there is a 100% chance that for every velocity, for everything above 80%, it will skip those notes. So again, you can have fun with this. You can also narrow the range. It doesn't have to be up to 100 or down to 0. It can be in the middle, like 35 to 56. And you can also adjust the probability. Say, hey, I just only want it every quarter, every 25% time that it happens, be in that range to skip that note or skip that step. And we also have ghost steps, which is very similar, but instead of skipping the steps, it will convert the range of velocities to a ghost note based on the probability. So let's bring that to 100% and 100%. And ghost notes are basically like silent, or not silent, but quiet notes. So let's say we wanted to bring this to 30 to 50-ish% and probability down to 43 or 39. And let's say you have settings for both of those, you can hit apply. And as you saw, some of those things disappeared. If I do ghost steps 100% and 100% here, and I turn that on and I hit apply, everything disappears. That is because we have set it to skip every step 100% of the time. So that is what you can do with GrooveMaker. Let's go back to random. There are a lot of elements and things that I will not mention in this video because there's so much to dive into. Definitely check out the review of this plugin on the Keepforest site to get more in-depth. They literally have hours and hours and hours of diving in footage. And you can also go to something like the Watchkeeper videos to see something similar because the plugins are very similar in design, almost identical, I would say. All right, so that is GrooveMaker. Let's go to the randomized functions. This will allow us to randomize the keys in the sequence. It will allow us to randomize the keys or the sequence. This can be helpful. Let's go to some more tonal elements and we'll go to whatever this is. Nickel harps, short. Let's see how that sounds. Let's go back to the rhythm page. We'll bring up a rhythm. Don't really hear much going on there. But let's go. I'm going to hit keys and sequence. You hear that it's randomizing the keys and sequence. Let's go to keys. Let's go to sequence. And as I'm hitting these buttons, you see that there's different things happening down here. You can also adjust the keys by clicking. Let's say this is right now F3. If I click this and I hit C2, I can say, I want those to be C2. I want these to be D2. And I want these to be G2. So you can customize what keys that you play on your keyboard to trigger those different sequences. You can also, I believe you can click up or down. So you have so many options there. There are also some of those keys. Let's see if I hit shift and click. I hit shift and click and hit G2 and that changed them all. So you can also try some of those modifier keys and see what happens when you adjust those here with the key selection below the sequence. You also have the retrigger knob. What this does, this is great for, let's go back to some percussion sounds. This is great. Let's go to war drums. I don't think I've messed with those yet. The retrigger is great for not having samples in a sequence sort of layer on top of each other. So let's say I have rhythm going on here and I have velocity. Let's see what's happening right now. So if I hit retrigger, it sort of makes the sample, it'll clear the sample out the way so that you have more room for the next sample to play. And what you can do is you can cut the tail of the sample so that the beginning of this next sample plays, or in the other mode, you can cut the beginning of the next sub-step and not the next step. So you see a little icon pop up there to let you know what mode you are in. And again, if you have any questions, I don't know if I showed the question mark earlier, but you can hit the question mark at the top of the page and you can get an overlay of what's happening on that page to get an idea of what you can do on that page. So that is retrigger. We also have play once button. So if I turn this off, also, let's bring this down to, let's say, 2 steps. With the one shot or the play once not selected, it'll keep looping as long as I hold the key down. If I do play once, I'm going to hold the key down. It'll play that sequence once. So you have that option there. If velocity is not, it'll play it as one shot either way, if no sequence is selected. So things to keep in mind for all these different options as you are navigating through this very, very in-depth plugin. So we are not done with this page. We also have at the top, we have the sequence option, which you can turn on or off. And this will allow you to play all the sequences. You can do ARP ascending. If you play all the sequence, it'll play the sequence with the key that you press. So if I hit C2, let's go here. You have ARP ascending, which will play the notes in ascending order. So if I play a chord, it'll play that in ascending order. If I do this descending, it'll play the notes in descending order. If I do ARP order, it'll play it in the order of the notes that you play on your keyboard. And then we also have advanced mode, which will have 8 slots for each step, so I can choose what sequence or what loop plays for each step. So let's say I wanted on step 1 to play loops 1 and 4, and then on this step, let's say 5 and 6. There's a little C at the top. If you can see that, that'll clear sort of that step. If we added more steps, you'll see we'll have more options where you can choose sort of what's playing on each step, and we can layer all the way up to all 8 on each step. So you have a whole lot of options in this plugin. Chords here will make those steps disappear, because what will happen is if you play a chord, it'll just play that chord option. And then of course you can hit C at the top again to clear those out. So you have a lot of options with the step sequence at the top there. All right, let's jump over to the top left. We mentioned this earlier, dynamics. If I hit the dynamics option on the top left, this will allow us to offset the sequencer for the sequences, either in passive or active mode, using the sensitivity slider all the way from 0 to 100% here. This will allow us to ramp up the velocity from, let's say, quiet to loud, or dynamics. We can overlay our main sequences. The passive will offset the sequences, while the active will sort of transform the sequences. And then we also have smooth control up here, as we mentioned earlier, that will smooth out those sequences. So let's say I have this set. You can hear the velocity. We'll do it just, we'll do quiet to loud over these 4 steps here. So you hear the dynamics happening there. If we turn this off, we jump over to velocity, we turn it on or off, you see our dynamics sort of taking over the velocity layer there. And again, you have some controls that you also have on the other pages: the cropping, the smoothing, the copy paste, and then flipping it on its axis, vertical or horizontal. You also have the active and passive. Flip it back. So again, so many controls and options here. You can shift them again by 1 step using the arrows here, left and right. If you want to just have some controls there, you can hold control, or is it option? You can hold one of these buttons to shift by sub steps also. So yeah, so many options there with these controls here in the dynamics. We also have this reset all. You see the little all there in the reset option. It'll make sure you say, are you sure? It will reset everything in that preset. I'm not exactly sure what the host button does. So don't quote me on what that button does. But what you might notice is when I'm hitting the keys, you'll see what keys I'm playing up at the top here. So if I'm hitting the C2, see C2 right there. If I'm holding down multiple notes, you'll see the second note up there. So yeah, you'll see all those notes all the way up to however many notes that is. And then finally on this page, the rhythm page, we are almost done. We have the rhythm browser, which clocks in at over 4,500. I'm going to say that again, 4,500 rhythms. They are in categories, so we can say, hey, I want to go through all categories, or I want to go through just the hits, or the war drums, or the main drums, or the fills, or the whooshes, or the cycles, or the countdowns. You have all these different categories, which helps us navigate to exactly what we need. We have so many options here. If you were familiar with the Watchkeeper plugin, very similar options here. So in the rhythm browser, you can load the rhythm only, which will not affect any of the other lanes. It will not load up the filter or pan or velocity layers, but some of these presets also include those. So if you have that off, it will load up some of those options. Let's go to, we're in war drums. Let's go to this thing, and we'll go to velocity. We'll turn off dynamics here. We'll go back here. You You see different things loading up as I'm choosing different ones. What I like to do is I like to choose the construct random button. What that does is that will use the category that you're in, and it'll construct a random rhythm based on the category you're in. And then it'll say, are you sure? I'm going to say, do not ask it again. Click that. Then hit OK. So there is that. And then there is, if I click that again, pick random, which will pick a random preset in the category. If we go to all categories, I will say pick random. Then we have to hit load. We can go to all categories, pick random, load. We can also choose this random button here. It'll say, are you sure? Hit OK. I like to go through those options. This is also the construct random option here. If there's something you like, you can save it, clicking the save icon and naming it. So you have those options. And then we have, again, the load rhythm you can save as also here. And you have those rhythms there loaded up and ready to go. So let's go again to pick random and then load. And add the humanize element there. And then we'll do pick random. Again, we are only in this category and you can choose favorite. So let's say you decide that you like this one. You can go in there and you can choose that as your favorite, put a star next to that, and you can load up only the favorites from your favorites category. So that is the rhythm browser. Again, you have so many options there. You have the randomize, you have the construct random based on random option that you have chosen. You randomize based on the category that you have selected over here. So let's say I go to stomps and I can just randomize based on the stomps category. And I believe that will get us through this rhythm page. Again, there's a lot more once you get the plugin that you can dive into on the settings and the different features of the plugin itself. Let's go to the last page here, which is the effects page. Again, you have the hotkeys. You have one hotkey there, Control or Command on Mac, and that of any potential parameter, any effect to return a default. So again, let's say I brought this all the way down. I can hit Command, and that'll bring it back to its default. With the master effects, you have a huge library. If I click here, you'll see you have a huge library of effects. You can hit the plus sign that you saw me hit on any slot and choose the effect that you want to load. You also have the effects chains. So similar to the rhythm browser, you have different effects chains. Let's go out of user. Let's go to all categories. You have all these effects chains you can choose from. So let's say I want to load that up, and it'll put that effects chain there. I can move them around just by clicking and sliding. So let's say I like these, but I want to put them in a different order, try different things out. I can slide them around. I can save my own presets here. I can do random and let's say do not ask again. So let's say I want to choose random master effects change from the category that we're in. So let's say we're in medieval percussion and there's only 5 there, but let's say I want to pick a random from medieval percussion. And there we go. And you have the bypass option. So if we unbypass, you hear the effects happening. Let's go to, we'll click here, we'll go to all categories. And we'll do pick random, load. Make sure you hit load. I always forget. If you do the random up here, you don't have to hit load. But if you do it in the actual folder here, the drop down here, you got to make sure you select it and hit load. You also, again, you have your favorites there, so you can navigate to just your favorite presets that you have loaded there. And then depending on the effect that you choose, you also have different presets down here at the bottom. You might have presets for the plugin that you can load up that will adjust those settings at the bottom. So let's say right now I'm in the Supercharger GT, which is a compressor. I have high pass filter. I have saturation, some character. You can link the stereo. Then you have some other options here, attack release, the output, the mix. If I go to this filter here, you can see we have state variable filter. We can adjust what filter it is. We have the cutoff and the resonance. I can have different presets loaded up there. I can have this be a high pass filter. If I go to this, what is this, choral? Let's see what preset presets we have here. As you can see, we have like space. I think this is reverb. So you have universal, ensemble, dimension. So again, depending on the preset that's loaded up, you can adjust. You can choose between different presets for that preset, presets for that effect, and you can also adjust the settings down here at the bottom. So that is a lot to dive into. You can also clear the slot. So let's say you like all these, you can clear that slot, you can move this around, you can move other things around. And if you want to search for things, you can, again, go back and search for different effects, or you can click the plus sign and load them up, or you can go back and click random up here, or choose if you know there's something you really, really like. And then you can also hit reset. It'll say, are you sure? Hit OK. It'll reset everything to its default state, and you can start all over again on the effects page. That is a lot. We went over. There's a lot more because now I want to jump over to the multi-tool page, which is a whole different beast, but it sort of puts in perspective all these different elements we saw. So we are going to jump over to the multi instruments that we can load up, and we're going to go over some of the settings there. All right, so now let's jump into one of the multis here. Again, we're going to get into, eventually, we're going to get into playing back some of these sounds just randomly. Let's go into, as you can see with the multis, we have elements and multi-kits. I didn't mention that we had a bunch of instruments earlier. So we have drum foundations, weapons and textures, whoosh and motion, breath and growls, tonal elements. We have core. This is what separates the core from the pro version, where we have hits, impacts, war drums, tribal drums, steps and stomps, medieval ensemble, kick and snare, weapon strikes, metals, elemental, whooshes, motions, vocal elements, tonal elements, and then you can also import your own samples. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the multis here, and on the multis we have elements and multi-kits. With elements here, we have all these different folders here. I won't go over all of them. You can load up, let's say if I wanted to load up war drums, basic, what's that, basic 1. And if I just hit a note here, that sounds great. Let's load up Ensemble 4. Again, we'll get to the playthrough shortly. This is not the playthrough. But what I wanted to see is find the multi that had this thing at the top. That's what I was looking for, and we found it, so we're going to leave it here. What we're going to start with the normal page. And there's a lot of options up here. So we're going to start on the normal panel here, which introduces some macro functions that includes multiple actions from the advanced menus that we'll get to shortly, and also some of the static sections that will introduce some creative possibilities. We won't go over all the settings here because the video is already going to be long enough because there's so many options here. I'm going to play it out the box. This is what this War Drums Ensemble 04 sounds like out the box. So with Very Pitch 1, what that does is that introduces a combination of keys and sequence randomizations and random pitch 1, creating new timbral palettes. So let's go Very Pitch 1. And that relates to, on this page here, sort of the random pitch options down here, the pitch key, random pitch 1 options down there. But this is just an easier way to have a macro do that. So Very Pitch 2 does the same as Very Pitch 1, but also engages retrigger for a cleaner sound. Remember, the retrigger option cuts off the sample before the next sample plays. So if I hit Very Pitch 2, if you just want those clean hits, Very Pitch 2 is better. Very Pitch 1 will have the sound sort of overlay a little bit. Then we have Organic and Hybrid Shot, which allows us to enable the Play Once feature and loads a random sound design rhythm for creating organic one-shots. So I'm going to hit that. And that. What we'll do is let's go to another War Drums Ensemble. Let's see if we keep our thing up top. We're going to go to normal, and we're going to play this. This is out the box. So what Very Shift 1 does is it will randomize the humanize function. It'll set randomized velocity sliders from 1 to 10%, and it will move sequences randomly by whole steps. It'll set the random velocity sliders between 1 to 10%, and then move sequences randomly by whole steps. So this is the default of this War Drum Ensemble 5. And I'm going to hit Very Shift 1. I'm going to hit it again. And I don't know if you can hear the subtle differences there, but it's happening. And then Very Shift 2 does the same thing as Very Shift 1, but it moves the sequences by substeps. I'm gonna hit that a couple times. What New Idea does is it will load a random rhythm from the specified category. It'll apply dynamic gaps and copies the velocity sequences to the filter tab of the multi-instrument. So I'm gonna hit New Idea 1. And I usually like to start with new idea because that just creates new ideas. And new idea 2 does something very similar, but it creates random, loads the rhythms randomly, so that you can get more drastic changes there. You have more options. Again, too much to dive into here on the normal page. You have dynamics where you can choose waveforms that are loaded. You can turn dynamics on or off. You can have dynamic shifting. You can also have include gaps there. You also have more utility modes where you have stereo. You can make it more chaotic. You have so many options there. Then you have this static section here, which allows you to randomize the pitch key, the pitch random 1, 2, adjust the tempo, adjust the pitch up and down randomly, or by 1 note or 2 notes, or however you want to think about it. Then you also have dynamics here where you can apply between negative 100 and 100% there. So you have so many options there. You also have the key sequence randomization. Remember, we saw that on the rhythm page. So this is more of a global option for that. And then quick save and quick load. So as a quick way to create a new pattern, a good way to think about it, a good sequence of creating a new pattern. So this is where we are at right now. I'm going to hit the C. All right, so you heard that pattern. I'm going to go new idea 2. I hit that. I'm going to go dynamics. I'm going to turn dynamics on. So you see that's highlighted now. So now dynamics are on. I'm going to select triangle waves. I'm going to hit that once. I'm going to shift them randomly, dynamic and maybe position shift there. And then let's see where we are. So you see just by clicking a few buttons. Also, let's go with stereo chaotic to make a chaotic stereo sequence, which it was already sounding chaotic. Let's click that a few times to see what happens. And then if I turn dynamic filter, so you have a lot of chaoticism going on. But yeah, new idea, dynamics, let's go triangle. Let's shift some things around. If we want, we can set all steps to random key. We can adjust the tempo. I'm going to cut the tempo in half. And you can start to create different rhythmic fun things. You can dive in even deeper on the multis by going to the advanced page. Again, we're not going to go through all these parameters, but you can go to the different pages. So with sequencer, you can have similar fluxes as we saw in the plugin itself. With the construct rhythm here, you have random rhythm. You can have the same random rhythm. You can have the random rhythm based on certain categories. So it can be straight or triplet there. Again, this is static, so this is on all the pages there. You can retrigger. Again, remember the retrigger cuts the sample off before the next sample plays. You have the dynamics page here where you can adjust the different dynamics, presets and shifts. You can turn it on and off. Again, you saw that on the normal page, but you have more options here. We have different parsing options. You're using skip steps and parse steps and things like that. Different position options to randomize positions, filtering. We have panning options. We have doubling. We have playback. We have AD, I think AHD, attack, decay, hold settings there. And then we also have effects options here. We can randomize the change and things like that for all the sequences loaded up down here. So this is just sort of like more of a global way to have those different settings. And again, you can do a hard reset up here. You can go back to normal and just have those macro settings. Again, can't dive into each of those elements because there's a lot to dive into on the plugin itself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to playing through a couple of presets from the instruments and the multis in the playthrough here. So we'll just hear how some of those sounds before we get to a demo. All right, here we go. So that is a quick overview of Berserkr. I'm going to try one more thing that I didn't get into. I'm going to drag, let me clear this multi here. We're going to jump to user import, the one thing I didn't try in this overview before we get into the playthrough. I'm going to go to, so what we're going to do is we're going to load in a sound from another Keepforest library into the user import here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find maybe some one shots. I want something maybe tonal. Let's see, scream. That's kind of cool. Actually, I didn't know I had that. I'm going to go to replace. You might have missed the sounds. This is whoa, but there was drag and drop. There is add new. I just went to replace a sample there. You can hear that it's kind of low in volume. Let me bring out the fade out. Step mode, we'll turn that on. Let's turn on like tripling. And you can go in here, you can say, I want to have different layers, all the things we showed earlier. That's kind of cool, adding some, let's go to pan. Go to filter, just do some random. You can use it to almost design your own sort of signature sound, dragging your own samples and import there. That's just a quick way to showing you how to use user import. Maybe something with a little bit more attack there, but you can go in here, you can use stretch mode. So let's say, let's take it off of step mode. Let's turn all this off. And so you can like build your own type of effects there. Almost like a signature sound, signature pluck. Again, I'm having too much fun with the user import here. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to a demo that I created featuring Berserkr from Keepforest. Here we go. Well, there you have it. That is the demo. I call it winners on this side. The intention of this track, I believe I'm going to try to get it to an artist. So it's sort of trailer, but more sort of hip hop. I don't know what you want to call it, but we'll see if we can find a great home for it and a great artist for it. As you can see, most of the sounds on this demo are from the Berserkr. I do have some additional hits from Breakout, Devastator Breakout Pro, also from Keepforest, and then I have an 808 and some risers. But most of the sounds are from Berserkr. We're going to go through each of the sounds here so you can hear what's going on, starting with war drums that we have right here. This is what's happening with war drums, and I converted them to audio because it's just a lot easier for me to edit and do the drops and different effects and things with the audio. So I used the plugin and then converted the file to audio, bounced it to audio here in Logic. So here are the war drums. Let's go back. And that's just the intro, and I think there's a breakdown of the same thing later in the track. So I just use that as an intro to get into the track. Then I have these whooshes. Not doing much there. It's more like a metallic whoosh. I'm going to cut off some of the ending on some of these. You're watching me do the live edit right now, but it's sort of like a metallic whoosh going on with those things. And then below that, I have another whoosh doing this. So I'm more of like just rolling into it, not exactly a whoosh, but you still hear those metal sounds going on there. And then I have them as hits also, where I cut off the sort of roll into it. I just have the hits going on there. And then next we have this loop. This was a multi, the Root Rhythms Jibberwock, one of those multis, doing this. So you hear the drum loop, you hear the little percussion thing going on. I really like the percussion hits and sticks there. Next we have March of Legends. This is another multi going on, playing this. So you hear some of those metallic things going on. And then we have the Warrior Steps. How do you say that? Nords? Navy? Nords? I don't know. Injords. We're going to play that. And that's where you start to hear some of those those vocal things come in, like those breaths and things. I have more of those happening as we get down to the breath solo. We'll get there shortly. Then we have Cyber Tribal Wild Berserker playing this. This is bringing some of the tonal elements into it. There's some great effects. That's just hold down one finger and it's playing that. I think that was another multi. And then we have Tribal Drum Hits happening. And in creating this, I tried to make sure that some of those tonal elements, there's a little bit of tonal element in those hits, just making sure they're sort of matched to the key that this was in, which I believe was sort of F minor-ish type key. Then we have some stomps going on. Here's how that sounds. You hear like some metal glass breaking or something in the background. Then we have claps coming in. Crowd clap stereo is the name of that sound. And each of those claps is a different sample from that snapshot. Then we have kicks. This is kicks tribal. So you hear some of the low and high end coming in there. And then to the breaths that I mentioned earlier, this is more of those vocal elements. Almost like a rhythmic breath thing. And then you might hear this squeal every once in a while. It's called Motion Squeak from the Motion Squeak Shorts. That comes in every once in a while. You hear this sound. And then there's another sound. I got to see where it is. That right there. So you have those squeaks coming in. And then we have some anvil hits, adding some more metallic sounds to it. And then finally, we have some crashes just to bring it all home. And those last few there are actually more, they're sort of like choked crashes. You can almost think of them as closed hi-hats, but I use them. I used a crash sound for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to play just the Keepforest Berserkr sounds I'm going to play from about here, and then maybe I'll bring in the other sounds as we get towards the end. Here we go. So final thoughts on the Berserkr from Keepforest. Really, I don't know how Keepforest keeps cranking out. See what I did there? Keepforest they keep cranking out these great plugins like Berserkr, like Watchkeeper. If you're familiar with Watchkeeper, again, you're going to dive right in. You're going to be right at home with the Berserkr. Very familiar layout and setup. It's almost exactly the same with maybe a couple of different changes, but it's basically the same. If you know Watchkeeper, you know this. You can check out our Watchkeeper review also. The Berserkr, really, there's no, I can't think of anything that I would change because there's so much you can do with it. There's even more power in it when you import your own samples. So not only do you get all those samples that it comes with, you also can import your own and tweak them using the Berserkr engine. So I mean, Keepforest, I really like their stuff. Keep sending stuff our way so that we can review it. Again, with this one, you have the 3 different versions. You have the pro version, you have the core version, you have just the WAV files. You can get all those different versions. It does require Kontakt 752 or higher. It is also compatible with the free Kontakt player. The pricing at the time of this recording, again, was $119 for the WAV files. It is $179 for the core and $299 or $269 for the pro, and those can go up when the sale ends, either by $20 or $30 depending on the range there. But definitely check it out. Even if you just get the WAV files, you have a lot of power at your fingertips, and you can get started there with the Berserkr. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, The Sampleist, on YouTube, so that you can find more great videos like this, and we will see you in the next video. All right, peace.